Welcome to Mastering Your Financial Life, hosted by Judy Heft, the founder and CEO of Judy Heft and Associates, Financial and Lifestyle Concierge. This year, she's celebrating 27 years in business. In every episode, Judy interviews professionals who help others successfully manage their financial lives. You can find this show on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more. Judy is the author of 2 books, How to Be Smart, Successful, and Organized with Your Money for a Better Today and Tomorrow, and her latest book, Mastering Your Financial Life Cycles, How to Successfully Manage Money in Every Decade of Life. You can read chapters of her books and catch prior episodes of the show at www.judithheft.com. Now, here's the host of Mastering Your Financial Life, Judy Heft.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm so excited to be here today. It's Mastering Your Financial Life. This is our 67th episode. And today I'm really pleased to be here with Howard Graber. Howie is a family lawyer. He's the founding partner at GraberRoberts. I've known Howie for over 30 years, so this is going to be a really great discussion. They represent clients in divorce and post-divorce. They work with matters including child support, alimony, whatever needs to be done. They are great advocates for their clients. And, you know, if it can be mediated, they prefer that, but they do litigation too. So today, welcome, Howard. I'm really thrilled to have you here.
Thanks, Judy. So nice to be here and nice to see you.
Great to see you too. So, you know, there's so many different questions. You know, what are the most important questions that a client who's contemplating divorce or thinking about it, they don't know where to begin? What are some of the first questions they should be asking their attorney?
Well, I typically would advise they start with, have you litigated a divorce case to conclusion? And the reason I say that, Judy, is because most of the time, if you engage a lawyer that is known to litigate and that can take the case all the way, there's that much more likelihood that the case will settle, because the other side's lawyer will know that whether or not an advocate as well and a great litigator, 2 litigators who are not scared of a courtroom oftentimes could bring the parties to a quicker settlement of the issues. So that's the first thing that I would typically say. Oftentimes, I would, and this is what I say to prospective clients when they ask that question often, what should I ask the next lawyer I might meet with? And I say, well, you shouldn't go to another lawyer, but if you are, oftentimes I advise that they should ask about the staff, whether there's adequate paralegals on board to do a lot of the paperwork so that the lawyer's not really doing it all. And basically whether the lawyer is comfortable with mediation. Mediation is pretty much the best route today to divorce, because post-COVID, there's really been quite a significant backlog in the court system. So rather than waiting 8 months, say, to get in for a hearing, oftentimes parties are now seeking out mediation, arbitration, just to get the case handled more quickly. So I typically would want to know that not only can the lawyer litigate the matter, but they're also welcome to the idea of mediating and arbitrating.
That's interesting to me that there's still a backlog from COVID. I had no idea. I thought that would have been, maybe they would have caught up by now and they were just, you know, processing cases. But
that's certainly the hopes of family lawyers, that the system starts moving the way it used to. It's difficult to get before the court, and unfortunately that's not fair to the citizens of the state of Connecticut, but they are trying their best to come up with new routes to the judgment date. So Family Court in Stamford has now developed what's called a Pathways program, which includes you file and there's a resolution plan date after 90 days. And at that time, it's reported to the court whether the case will go uncontested or whether the parties are fighting over finances or custody. But it's a whole new, it gets tracked at that point, and the court's trying new ways to get through the backlog. So as disappointing as it is to have the backlog, I can honestly say that I see in practice the judicial department attempting to move cases along.
Oh, that's good. That's a good positive way to look at it too.
I'll give you an example, Judy. Within this month, a new public act just became effective, which states that in a divorce, the court has to hear financial motions that are filed, if coupled with an affidavit, within 60 days. So that's implementing a brand new statute to make sure that, say, someone can't get before the court to get child support, which is obviously horrible. Now there's a way and access to get that case before a judge within 60 days, which is really a step forward.
Oh, that's terrific news. That's really good to know, because I would think most people, going through that and having to wait, it gets so frustrating, especially in cases where they still have to live together.
Correct.
And
Which is
if
very
it's
common.
not amicable, it can be very stressful. I'm sure it was really bad during COVID when people couldn't do anything and they had to stay in that same house with that person they wanted to separate from. It's not easy.
It was reported as some of the hardest times that I've seen amongst couples in the 30 years that I'm practicing. COVID was very difficult.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. So, talking about finance, so what are some of the financial steps that, say, client comes to you, they're really ready to get a divorce, but they haven't spoken to their partner yet. What are some financial steps that they should take just to protect themselves before they start?
Well, typically the first thing that I advise a prospective client who is not the moneyed spouse, as they're known, or the wage earner, and that could be either male or female. I'm happy to say over the 30 years that I represent just as many powerful females and successful females as I do men. So that's a huge change in society that's welcomed. But typically what I would say to the non-moneyed spouse, the non-wage earner, is it's a good idea to try and accumulate at least 7 to 8 months worth of finances to cover rent, food, anything, your bills, and legal fees. And unfortunately, that's important advice, especially here on the Gold Coast of Connecticut, Lower Fairfield County. We deal with narcissism in so many of our cases. I won't put a percentage on it, but it's common. And along with narcissism also comes financial abuse. So it's not strange for us to be in a matter where someone is not supporting a spouse or their children. And so I now at least we have this new statute. So 60 days and you're going to be in front of a judge and things could get sorted out. But it's still a good idea to have, I don't want to call it a war chest, because obviously I'd prefer people to settle and amicably divorce, but it's just a good idea to have a backup of funds or a source of funds, whether it's a parent or an equity line or a savings account, just to make sure if there is financial abuse, that there is some wherewithal, not only to survive, but to have counsel fees to ensure that you could get before the court and get what's equitable, an equitable order from a judge.
Yeah, that's very helpful. So we work with a lot of the non-moneyed spouse, it seems, and they are men too. The majority are women, I'm sorry to say, but there are a lot of men in there too. But, I had a case yesterday. A woman came to me. She was referred by her attorney to help her get her financial affidavit together. And, so many times, well, this particular woman said, I don't have any access to the things that my husband has on his own. I have access to our joint account. And, she's afraid to ask him. And we need that. How can we figure out what they're spending if we don't have all the paperwork? So I think one of the things that's really important to tell people, and we talk about that even if you're not thinking about a divorce, is you really need to know those passwords and logging. So you really need to be a full 100% partner. So you know what's going on, what's being spent. It's so important. And I think so many people, there's division of responsibility. Sometimes one person takes over the bill paying and the other person doesn't pay attention. And, it can switch back and forth, but you really need to know your numbers, no matter what you're doing. And especially if you get to this situation.
I agree. And oftentimes, because one of the spouses, and it's interesting because it's not always the moneyed spouse that has control of the money, right? So, but one of the spouses usually pays the bill.
Right.
And has control of the accounts. And oftentimes, like you said, it's a division of responsibilities. Someone has no idea what they have or where it is. Oftentimes we're asked, how should someone discover their assets, make sure that they know what's available? I usually would say to first start with simple bank statements. If you're worried about a spouse diverting funds or having other accounts, if you look at a simple bank statement, you'd be surprised how many times you see a payment of a credit card that's never been disclosed, or transfer to a bank account that's never been spoken about. Happens all the time. So just looking at or I like to point out ATM withdrawals. Like, why does the person have to take $1,000 a week out at ATMs? If they're not spending that, they're obviously stockpiling it somewhere else. So that's one place to look. I oftentimes tell people to search for retirement statements. And the reason that I bring that up particularly is when I'm asked to see what assets exist in a marital estate, I oftentimes first go to the Schedule B of a tax return, because on the Schedule B of the tax return, it's going to set forth the dividends and the income that have been earned in the different asset and financial accounts. But what does not show up on a financial disclosure, or rather the Schedule B of a federal tax return, are retirement accounts, because the income is not taxable. So that's sometimes a place where we find hidden money. Retirement accounts that aren't disclosed and don't show up on a tax return are sometimes difficult to trace. So I do often say to look for those statements. And as I brought up Schedule B, that's when you want someone to have knowledge of what is available to them. A Schedule B is a great place, if they could get their hands on a tax return, to see all of the banks and brokerage houses or whatever might be on there, and seek out information about those accounts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really good. So many different places to look. And I think, like you said, that it's not the non-moneyed spouse that's not paying the bills doesn't necessarily know where to look. I love that about the ATMs. I hadn't thought about that one, but yeah, why are they taking all that cash out? And another place, the Venmo accounts. Venmo is really, you got to get into that one, because that's really showing where you're paying people and why.
We require Venmo statements and Zelle statements, and usually we have to go past the typical. We have to get screenshots, which have more details sometimes. So there are ways to discover hidden accounts, certainly. And I bring up the ATM because that's the easiest way for someone to stockpile money, is to just take out cash withdrawals. They're typically not noticed.
Right. Good point. Something
and
I really
found, we find those when we're looking for flower shops and hotels sometimes.
Exactly. Jewelry.
The other thing we look at statements for, right?
Absolutely. Let's take a quick little break here, and then we're going to come back. We're going to talk some more with Howard.
Thank you.
Hey there. I just want to tell you a little bit about my new book that just came out called Mastering Your Financial Life Cycles. And here it is. It's how to successfully manage your money in every decade of life. I co-authored this with my CFO, Liz Levy. And together we created this manual that's going to help you through every stage of life. We talk about having a baby. We talk about young adulthood, pre-retirement, what to do when you're at that age of retirement. If you're contemplating divorce, do you need an estate plan? We cover all of these, each subject in a different chapter. And I really think that you're going to find this so helpful, because at the end of every chapter, we have checklists that you can look at and you can use, and they can be a guide for you. So this is a wonderful manual that we've created. It's available on Amazon. You can also find it on our website at judithheft.com/book. And we're here for you. If you need anything, reach out. I hope you enjoy the book. Here's another picture of it, just so you know what's going on. Here it is. and I'm really proud of it. It's my second book, and I'd love to have you read it and give me your feedback. Judy Heft, judithheft.com, financial and lifestyle concierge, celebrating 26 years in business. And over the years, I've learned so much. And what I've been trying to do is impart a little bit of this knowledge to you so I can help all of you become as financially organized as I am.
And we're back. We're back here with Mastering Your Financial Life with Howard Graber. Howard is a matrimonial attorney. And so, Howard, so some of the things, what are some ways to protect your assets? So I was talking to someone the other day, and they were telling me how they inherited some property that was their parents. Their parents had some buildings in New York City, and it was income producing property, and they would, get their money quarterly. They were paid out. And then they went and they got a divorce, and that money went into their joint account. And then they get a divorce after 20 something years of marriage. And the other person got half of that in perpetuity. So how do you protect yourself? What are some of the things to do to protect your assets so you get what's rightfully yours?
Well, the first thing would be to do a prenup, right?
Mm.
Prenuptial agreement before getting married, which is common. And also pretty common these days are postnuptial agreements, which are pretty similar to a prenup, but you enter into it after you've been married for some amount of time. As far as protecting assets from a spouse, because I think that's the situation that you're raising. In the state of Connecticut, unfortunately, unlike, and I say unfortunately because I'm not sure I'm in favor of the law, unlike several or most other states, there are separate assets. If you receive an inheritance, it is considered one spouse's separate property. That's not the law in the state of Connecticut. In Connecticut, no matter what the asset is or how it was acquired, it is considered marital property. So one way for families to protect an inheritance would be, it's called a spendthrift trust. That's one of the ways to protect an asset. And that would be where prior to passing away and leaving an inheritance, a trust would be formed where the spouse who is to receive the money actually has no control over the money. All control is given to an independent trustee. So that's pretty much the most solid way for a family to protect inheritances. I mean, there are other trusts that I'm not claiming to be a trust expert. There are other trusts that have similar effects that are also where the person doesn't get to make the decision as to what happens with the money. But that in Connecticut is the safest, most sure way to protect a family's inheritance if that's what they're seeking to do, would be to have what's called a spendthrift trust.
I never heard of the spendthrift trust. That's good to know.
And once it's received, though, I mean, if it's not a spendthrift trust, if someone receives an inheritance, that is up for division by the divorce court. And if you keep it separate, that's certainly, I would advise everybody to keep it separate to the extent that they're considering a divorce. I mean, if they're happily married, I don't think they have to really take these steps. But I think that keeping it separate is a good idea. And with regards to what I've seen over the past 3 decades in the Connecticut courts, is it often comes down to what period in the marriage the inheritance was received. So if you're married for 20 years and the inheritance came in at the beginning of the marriage, the courts usually divide that the way they would divide the rest of the assets. If you're married for 20 years and the inheritance is received in the 19th year and a divorce case is pending or the marriage is on the rocks, oftentimes arguments are made, and the courts do take heed to these arguments, that the inheritance should stay with the party who's received it. So, and there's kind of a spectrum among the years and percentages.
Sounds like you need a good attorney like yourself to handle that issue. It's a
Thanks,
little complicated.
I appreciate the kind word, Judy. But it's an interesting, and that's not to say that a court cannot just give 100% of an inheritance to the other spouse if that's what they find to be fair and equitable. So I think if anybody you speak to, if they're doing estate planning and they're going to leave to a child, and either there's trouble in paradise or the parents don't like the in-law, the son or daughter-in-law, it's definitely wise for them to go through a spendthrift trust and keep it outside of the hands of a divorce court.
It's so true. And it is important to get all your ducks in a row and talk to all the right professionals. Like you said, a trust and estate attorney is really important because they know all the laws on that, and I'm sure there's overlap there, but it's good to have a good team that can collaborate for you and work together.
We work very closely with several estate attorneys, and we're not shy to ask questions or have our clients retain, even just to answer a few questions about estates or to review trusts to see if, depending on which side we represent, if the trust could be broken or if we could withstand an attack. I mean, oftentimes I think my next week is filled with a case that involves someone trying to breach a postnup or break a postnup, and we're trying to validate it, to keep it so it survives and protects the property it was meant to. So I mean, we do, and we have several New York lawyers coming in as experts in that matter. So our firm does reach out to other professionals often to make sure we have the best team possible and to obtain the best results we can for our clients.
It's so important. You really need a good team. So, we were talking about protecting assets, but, are there other ways to protect assets from being divided? If you're going through a divorce, or just like make sure you have all your ducks in a row, the postnup, the prenup, whatever that is, talk to your estate attorney too.
That's basically it, Judy. I mean, there's not many, as I said before, once you get married, everything that either party owns becomes part of the marital estate.
Right.
Immediately.
And so what if you have, you have a suspicion of hidden funds? Like, how do you look? Do you hire a forensic accountant, or how do you look at that? Does your firm figure that out too?
We usually do. I mean, we spoke about it briefly earlier on in this podcast, where you would certainly go to bank statements, Schedule Bs. For the most part, we do find hidden funds, or we think we do. I mean, obviously, if we never find them, we don't know. The only time that it really becomes problematic is there are offshore accounts which will not entertain subpoenas. So, like, for example, I learned early on in my career that the Cayman Islands actually has a law that makes it illegal for an attorney to subpoena a bank. And I was advised against subpoenaing a bank they had a branch here in Greenwich, but I did not go forward with the subpoena as it would be considered illegal under international law, or at least under the Cayman Islands law. So they protect their hidden funds over there. And if any of your clients happen to notice a bank account in the Caymans, that should cause some concern.
Okay, I'll keep an eye out for that. I had no idea. These podcasts are great because I'm talking to so many wonderful professionals like yourself, and I'm really learning a lot of little tidbits that I can keep in my head and help people with. So yeah, it's so important. So, I've known you for a long time, and I know that you and Dina seem to have a wonderful marriage. You do a lot of stuff together. You're good friends, So, as a divorce attorney or matrimonial attorney, you see everything. You see people that come in that, they just couldn't make it work, but they end up being best friends and they co-parent beautifully. And then you see the complete opposite end of that spectrum where they hate each other and they never want to speak to each other ever again. And it's a lot of contempt and screaming and yelling and, hurting the children and all of that kind of stuff. So, what are your secrets for a successful marriage, Howie? What do you and Dina do? I know that you're good friends, but what else?
Well, we, she's a therapist too, so it's easy when you're married to a psychotherapist. I go home and lay on the couch and And no, I'm kidding, obviously. We developed a term we call selflessness. We actually developed a term for how we treat each other, and we put each other first at all times, which I think does not happen enough in a lot of relationships. So we actually have a term for it. We've been together for 37 years now and going strong, which we're very happy with. A lot of people do ask me about the how to have a successful marriage, not based on my own, just based on what I see here. And you know, I'll tell you, one of the most incredible things that I see is that couples that separate bedrooms due to snoring issues are more likely to divorce than any other any other facet of society that seems to come into my office. So that's a great tip for people too. If you don't like the snoring, maybe put in headphones or something, because as soon as you separate bedrooms, it leads to divorce. It's incredible. Maybe it's the lack of togetherness, or I don't know. I can't put my finger on it, but I was pretty amazed at snoring being such, you would expect it to be an affair.
Right.
But snoring, I hear about snoring more than I hear about affairs.
That's the number one reason for divorce.
Well,
Wow.
the first straw, it doesn't break the camel's back, but snoring is the first straw.
I see. Okay. Well, it makes sense. It really does. Yeah. That's so interesting to me too, because I know a lot of married people. I'm divorced myself, and then when they tell me, when I find out or know that they're sleeping in separate bedrooms, I think to myself, and obviously I don't comment, I don't want to judge them, but I think to myself, like, why? Like, what's the point? Don't you just, it's not about the sex. You just want to get in there and cuddle or have some togetherness or kiss someone goodnight in your bed and be cozy. I think it's really, it enhances your relationship if you stay together like that. So
and it absolutely affects your relationship when you don't.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. No, I agree. And, I'm sure there's plenty of other factors, but yeah, that's a good first straw. Well, this was really interesting talking to you, Howie. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot. And so how can our listeners find you?
Well, we have an office in Stamford, Connecticut. It's in the M&T Bank building on Bedford Street, 350 Bedford Street. Our website is www.GraberRoberts.com. I've been in Stamford practicing family law for 33 years now. So hopefully I'm easy to find and recognizable in Fairfield County at this point. But certainly we'd love to assist anybody that we can. I believe that our firm, we've just invested a lot in technology, which enables us. We're rolling out a new type of representation at present, which is it's like a fixed fee with an a la carte menu. We find a lot of people are surprised by costs of a divorce. They don't want to be surprised. They don't want, or they're, I don't say they want, obviously they want the best result possible, but oftentimes things get costly. So we've invested a lot in technology, which helps us with the paperwork, the discovery phase. It enables us to, as I said, put a fixed fee on certain portions where there's no surprises, and we're delivering an a la carte menu where our clients could then choose. Do they want us to file certain discovery motions or engage us to argue certain custody aspects of the case instead of just full-on representation, which of course we still do. Oftentimes people appear and they want to know that you're their lawyer from the beginning to the end, and that you're going to fight the fight and get them the best result they possibly can get under all the circumstances. So yeah, I look forward to continuing to help out the people of Fairfield County for a long time in the future.
I love that with, the set rate and then the a la carte menu, because I know in my business too, people don't want to be surprised. Like you said, they don't like the hourly. Well, how many hours is it going to take? Well, I don't know, so it's back and forth. So being able to tell them up front, we can do this piece for you for a certain amount, and then whatever else you want, it's going to be extra. I love that. It's great.
It's a brand new idea, Judy. I mean, we just rolled it out this year. a fixed fee where we could base it on the amount of bank accounts. It's all done through technology, and there are no surprises, and there don't have to be. Now, obviously, that's finances. I mean, custody is its own a drama, let's say. I mean, I don't know if anybody could do a fixed fee on a custody litigation case.
Right.
But as far as finances, we're really trying to make it as easy as we can for people to understand what they're about to go through and to have a part and a say in how expensive the case is going to be.
That's helpful. I love that. That's great. Well, are you on LinkedIn? Can they find you on LinkedIn? I know you're on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. I'm on
That's
LinkedIn.
really a good way to find you. And do you want to give out your email, or would you rather not for spam purposes?
My email is hgraber@GraberRoberts.com.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much for being a great guest today. I really enjoyed
Thanks,
it.
Judy. It was really a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thank you for tuning into Mastering Your Financial Life, hosted by Judy Heft. You can read chapters of her books and catch prior episodes of the show at www.judithheft.com. Thank you for your positive comments and sharing this show with others.